The image is seared into public consciousness like a scar. 4 figures walking side by side on the trimmed green lawn, the rotors of the helicopter still slicing the air behind them. On one end, Donald Trump clings possessively to Melania's hand, unwilling to release her, even under the watchful eyes of the press. On the other end, Kate, radiant in a crimson coat and matching hat, takes the deliberate step of shifting her handbag from one hand to the other, offering her husband the simplest chance of intimacy. But William does not take it. He keeps his hands stiff by his side, his body angled slightly away from hers, his gaze firmly ahead. In that moment, before the lenses of the world, a marriage in agony is laid bare. It is not the absence of touch that strikes hardest, but the symbolism of it. A wife reaches not with words, but with the quietest signal, and a husband refuses. To some it looked like nothing, a fleeting misstep in the choreography of royal appearances. But to others, especially those who have watched this union with a keen eye for years, it was confirmation of what has long been whispered. William is not romantic, not tender, not the man Kate imagined when she first clung to his side in their university days. What once seemed like the fairy tale of a commoner turned duchess now resembles a cold arrangement where duty suffocates love and appearances trump affection. The tragedy of Kate Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, is that she has perfected the art of looking happy while standing alone. Her smile is never dimmed, her posture never falters. But behind every elegant step lies the unspoken ache of a woman who longs for warmth, for reassurance, for the simplest act of being claimed publicly by the man she devoted her life to. She is, in many ways, the picture of restraint, a woman sculpted by royal duty to hide every disappointment, every slight, every humiliation. And yet the cameras, ruthless in their honesty, capture what her lips never say. The distance between her and William is more than physical. It is emotional, spiritual, a gulf that no amount of rehearsed charm can disguise. Royal insiders murmur that Kate has fought for years to draw William closer, not just for herself, but for their image as a couple. She knows the weight of symbolism, the importance of small gestures in building narratives for a monarchy constantly under scrutiny. A hand held, a glance exchanged, a soft laugh shared in public. These are the currencies of love that even the most skeptical public understands. And yet, William remains unmoved. Cold, calculated, bound to a script of masculine stoicism, he offers little more than nods and tight-lipped smiles. He has inherited not only the crown's weight, but also his father's reputation for emotional barrenness, the same chill that once pushed Diana to despair. And Kate, much like her late mother-in-law, is left to shoulder the agony of appearing adored when in reality she is abandoned. Observers could not help but compare the two couples walking side by side that day. Trump, for all his controversies and flaws, held on to Melania as if his life depended on it. Melania, often criticized for her frosty demeanor, still leaned into the unspoken intimacy of shared touch. Their bond may not be perfect, but it was visible. In contrast, William and Kate looked less like husband and wife, and more like colleagues, bound together by title but separated by an invisible wall. The picture was painful. Kate's body tilted slightly towards William, her hand free, her gesture clear, while William's body was angled away, his hand limp, his attention elsewhere. It was not just a missed opportunity, it was a revelation. Some argue William's behavior is the result of royal protocol, the stiff rules against overt displays of affection. But this defense grows thin when the world remembers how often Harry and Meghan broke those same rules, and how their warmth, their hand-holding, their whispered exchanges electrified crowds. If Harry could risk criticism to protect Meghan with his affection, why could William not do the same for Kate? The answer, many suggest, is simple. William is not a man of romance. He is a man of duty, of formality, of icy control. He does not see affection as essential, nor does he understand the hunger of a wife who has sacrificed everything for his side. To him, perhaps, a handhold is meaningless. To Kate, it is everything. And therein lies the agony. The whispers grow louder. This is not a marriage of equals, but a partnership of convenience. Kate fulfills her role with grace, producing airs, smiling for the cameras, wearing her designer coats and hats with effortless poise. William fulfills his role with rigidity, preparing for the crown, embodying the seriousness of monarchy, but forgetting the softness of love. Insiders claim that behind palace walls, Kate has pleaded for more, begged for tenderness, even argued for the importance of public intimacy to counter the constant comparisons with Harry and Meghan. But William, stubborn as stone, refuses. He sees no need. And so Kate is left alone, her gestures unanswered, her signals ignored, her longing dismissed. This one photo, this one silent moment on the lawn, is more than a slip. It is a portrait of a union unravelling, a love story that was never as romantic as the public wanted to believe. For years, the tabloids sold the fantasy of the perfect couple. William, the handsome heir, and Kate, the graceful commoner who captured his heart. But reality is harsher. Theirs is not a fairy tale but a performance, one where the leading man has forgotten his lines and the leading lady is forced to act alone. The agony is not in shouting matches or scandals, but in the quiet absence of touch, the emptiness of a hand left unheld. Kate's silence is deafening. She will never speak of the loneliness, never confess to the media that her marriage lacks the romance she once dreamed of. She is too disciplined, too loyal to her role, but the cameras speak for her. The photos capture what her words cannot, the constant reaching and the constant rejection. Every step she takes beside William is heavy, with the knowledge that she is wanted as a symbol, not as a wife. She is desired for her composure, not her heart. She is cherished for her image, not her soul. And William, blind to the depth of her sacrifice, marches on without noticing the devastation he leaves in his wake. And so the agony grows. Kate smiles brighter, works harder, dresses more elegantly, all in the hope that William will one day notice her not just as the mother of his children, not just as the future queen, but as the woman who gave him her youth, her loyalty, her everything. But William remains William, cold, distant, unromantic. The tragedy of their marriage is not in explosive fights, but in the absence of warmth, the famine of affection. A famine that eats away at Kate's spirit even as she dazzles the world with her smile. If there was ever a moment that pulled back the curtain on the myth of William and Kate's perfect marriage, it was that walk across the grass. The world saw what Kate felt, the hollowness of standing next to a man who would not meet her halfway, the ache of longing for connection and being met with indifference. For her, it was more than a snub. It was a confirmation of the emotional distance that has quietly plagued their union for years. To the casual viewer, it may have been overlooked, a simple oversight in a rigidly formal appearance. But those who have followed them closely knew instantly. This was not an accident, it was a pattern. The pattern began long before the cameras captured that scene. Friends from their university days at St Andrews recall a relationship defined by Kate's unwavering devotion and William's unpredictability. She waited for him, moulded her life around his whims, accepted his cold retreats, and rejoiced in his fleeting warmth. When he broke things off in 2007, she endured the humiliation of headlines branding her weighty Katie, a woman clinging desperately to a prince who wasn't sure he wanted her. Yet when he returned, she welcomed him back without question, as though the pain of waiting and rejection was a small price to pay for a future crown. That decision, noble or naive, set the stage for the agony that would follow. Kate has always been the one to reach, to bend, to compromise. She adjusted her entire life to fit his, patiently standing by through years of uncertainty. When the engagement finally came, the world celebrated her as the ultimate victor, the commoner who had won the heart of a prince. But even then, insiders whispered that William had been pushed more by expectation than passion, more by duty than desire. His proposal, though romantic in words, carried the weight of inevitability rather than spontaneity. To Kate, it was everything she had dreamed of. To William, it was perhaps a box ticked, a step toward his destiny. Marriage did not transform him into a more tender man. If anything, the crown's shadow grew heavier, and with it, his emotional distance. While Kate embraced her role with dazzling enthusiasm, mastering diplomacy, fashion, motherhood, and charity work, William seemed to retreat further into a shell of stoic duty. He admired her efficiency, praised her reliability, but rarely displayed the affection she craved. For Kate, the romance was not in grand declarations, but in the little gestures that were absent, the hand not taken, the smile not returned, the glance not shared. And as the years rolled on, Those absences became unbearable truths. Observers have noticed the tension in subtle ways. While Harry often reached for Meghan's hand instinctively, William walked beside Kate as though separated by glass. At events, Kate would glance toward him, her smile hopeful, waiting for acknowledgement that rarely came. She laughed brightly at his rare jokes, leaned toward him during conversations, and positioned herself close enough that touch was natural. And still, William remained distant, his arms crossed or his hands clasped in front of him, as though affection was a burden too heavy for a future king. To the public, their formality looked regal. To Kate, it was a reminder of how alone she was, even in a crowd. The agony of this coldness has only deepened as the comparisons have sharpened. Harry and Meghan's bond, no matter how controversial, radiates warmth. Their hand-holding, their whispered exchanges, their undeniable chemistry, all of it casts a shadow over William and Kate's stiff partnership. For every photo of Harry shielding Meghan from rain, there is one of William striding ahead, while Kate follows dutifully behind. For every clip of Meghan gazing into Harry's eyes, there is one of Kate looking toward William, only to find his gaze fixed elsewhere. The contrast is devastating, not only to Kate's image, but to her heart. Royal insiders claim that Kate has attempted to bridge the gap privately. She has gently raised the issue, suggesting that the public appreciates gestures of intimacy, that the monarchy benefits from couples who appear genuinely in love. But William, stubborn and proud, dismisses such concerns as trivial. He insists that their role is not to perform romance but to project dignity. To him, affection in public is unnecessary, even unseemly. What he fails to realize, however, is that dignity without warmth feels hollow. A monarchy without love risks becoming irrelevant, and a marriage without intimacy risks becoming unbearable. The helicopter lawn moment crystallized all of this into one cruel image. Trump and Melania, often accused of living separate lives, in that moment appeared closer than the royal couple once hailed as perfect. The irony was bitter. Melania, who is often seen brushing off Trump's attempts at hand-holding, was now the one whose husband clung tightly, refusing to let go. Kate, who longed for her husband's touch, was the one left hanging. The message was brutal. Even the most unlikely couple displayed more intimacy than the future king and queen. Kate's smile, as always, never faltered. She walked with elegance, her crimson coat catching the light, her hat perfectly perched. She looked every bit the princess the world adores, but her body betrayed her. The bag switch, the slight lean toward William, the readiness of her left hand, these were silent pleas, subtle movements designed to bridge the space between them. When William failed to respond, the rejection reverberated not just between them, but across the globe. The photo became a symbol, an unintentional confession that their marriage was not what it seemed. This silence between them is more dangerous than any scandal. A scandal can be explained, forgiven, even forgotten, but silence gnaws away at the soul. It turns companionship into loneliness, partnership into estrangement. For Kate, the silence has become her shadow. She is surrounded by adoration from the public, respect from her peers, admiration from the press. And yet, the one thing she craves most remains out of reach. Her husband's affection, his tenderness, his willingness to meet her halfway. The agony lies in her patience. She has given him everything: her loyalty, her youth, her adaptability, her ability to endure. She has borne his children, protected his image, stood beside him through storms. She has done so without complaint, without scandal, without faltering, and yet the return has been meagre. A cold shoulder in place of a warm embrace, a distant nod in place of a loving glance, a refusal to hold the hand of the woman who has given him her life. This is not the fairy tale the public was promised. This is not the love story Kate dreamed of when she watched him from across campus all those years ago. This is a bargain, a compromise, a marriage in agony. She has everything a woman could want: jewels, titles, palaces, the admiration of millions, and yet she lacks the one thing she cannot buy, cannot demand, cannot replace: her husband's heart. The tragedy is that William may not even realize the damage he is doing. He sees himself as disciplined, regal, prepared for kingship. He does not see that he is crushing the spirit of the woman beside him, that every ignored gesture is a small heartbreak, that every refusal to connect pushes her further into despair. He may not even notice the way she switches her bag, the way she leans toward him, the way her eyes linger on his face, waiting for acknowledgement. To him, these details are invisible. To her, they are everything. And so Kate suffers quietly, the way she always has. She will never air her grievances, never betray her marriage, never expose her agony to the public. She will endure because endurance is her gift and her curse. She will smile because the smile is her armor. She will play her part because she knows no other way. But behind the smile is a woman broken by the absence of romance, by the coldness of a husband who cannot or will not meet her halfway. The agony is not in what is said, but in what is not. It is in the silence, in the empty spaces, in the hand left unheld. To all my curious Sussex family, thank you all for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like and put a comment. Bye-bye. See you then in the comments section.